good to meet all of you. I've met you two wonderful people, but yeah, my name's Ashley Rogers, and local to San Antonio. I have been creating since I was, I don't know when I wasn't creating, but from the time I was little until all the way through college, someone taught me how to create. So I was in school and you do it for a grade. And so I learned a lot of foundational skills, which were really, really great and very helpful. And then I began teaching art. So then it switched to, okay, now I'm going to teach you the foundational skills. But I will never forget, I had two little ones at the time. So I have two teenagers and an 8-year-old now. But my husband said, you need to have time to create for you. When was the last time you just went and got some time to create? So he got me a big canvas. I hadn't created for, I hate to say almost a decade. I'd been painting. I did a business and I painted on shoes for people, and it was like commission work, but they would ask me to paint things like Harry Potter and the Hulk, and that's not super creative for me. But I stood in front of this blank canvas and he gave me like 5 hours. He took the kids and I stared at the canvas for 5 straight hours. And I realized I have no idea what to do with this. I don't know. And I had so many things that were locked up inside of me, so many things I wanted to share. And I realized it's not just about time. It's not just about having the supplies or the space. I don't know how to get out what's inside of me right now. If somebody said, share your heart on a canvas, I would go, it was blank, but my heart wasn't blank. So I realized there was a disconnect there. And I knew I do have a lot of deep thoughts, but not only that, is anybody else seeing analogies? Does analogies speak to you? Like you go outside and you're like, oh, I can't tell you how many times something will happen or somebody be in traffic and I'm like, oh, that's a good analogy. Someone could preach on that one. That's how I see. I see visually, I see analogies. And there was this disconnect between the way I saw the world, this gift that I felt like God had given me, and I did not know how to bridge that gap for the life of me. So somewhere along the way, God birthed this idea of art ministry. So I run something called Created Ministry, and I help people connect with the healing heart of God through the visual arts and all the arts and dance and things like that. Because so many people, I will say, raise your hand if you're not. Actually, we'll just do this right now. Raise your hand if you feel like you're an artist. Does anybody feel like they? Okay. Raise your hand if you feel like you are creative. Okay, so it's an interesting mix of people that somewhere along the way, I have so many times sat in a room filled with little ones. And if you say, raise your hand if you're an artist, guess how many of them will raise their hand? All of them. They always raise their hand because every little one feels like they're an artist and they're creative. So somewhere along the way, we lose this like disconnect between that's who I am. I'm a creative person. I am an artist. And then we grew up and we're like, well, I can't do it as good, or they're better than me, or I don't have those skills. And so we have connected this idea of creativity with what goes on a wall or what goes on a stage or what gets presented to other people as good. And I feel so passionately that our creativity is more connected to helping us get out what's inside, helping us learn from what we're experiencing around us as a way of expression, but not just about, I love when my art gets to be on the walls. I'm not going to lie. I think there's a beauty in doing something excellently as well. That's a skill, that's a craft. But I also feel like creativity is for all people. So I had to learn how to play, because it kind of broke down to, I've got to go back to being a kid. Where did I lose this disconnect? So I wanted to share this painting with you, but I'm actually going to call it my mirror, because as you were sharing, I was like, oh, my canvases are my mirror. And this is the way that I look at myself, and I'm like, oh, that's what's going on. I didn't realize what was going on inside of me. I'm a mixed media artist. I can now say that. I had no idea what I was before. I would just say, I do art stuff and teach it. I don't know. But I realized I like to play with charcoal and acrylic, and I love old papers. If you ever have old papers, thank you for the loaded boxes of old hymnals and stuff. I just love old things, and so they tell a story. I think art tells a story, dance tells a story, baking can tell a story, and so everything we do can tell a story. This one I wanted to share with you because this is my mirror. I feel like there are two ways that I've ended up creating. I create for myself to get out what's inside, and then I create for other people. And I'll share what I'm pointing down here. There's a painting down here that I'll share with you in a second. But so for this painting, I was wrestling. I was really wrestling because I'm going to admit to you, I'm a little bit of an enabler sometimes. I don't like that about myself, but I have a hard time letting people do things on their own sometimes. I want to help. I want to fix it. Does anyone know how a butterfly and a chrysalis works? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. I'm not a science teacher, but I did look into it, and I kept seeing this picture of this chrysalis, and it's a caterpillar. It's a big squishy green caterpillar that goes into this thing called a chrysalis and a cocoon, and it stays there hanging on a leaf, which that's just weird in and of itself. And then somehow along the way, it gets enough strength to break out, dry its wings off, and then become a butterfly. So if we can just pause for a moment and acknowledge that's bizarre that happens. We just are so used to that. That's a thing. That's kind of crazy that is part of creation. And so I've learned so much through that process, specifically this process of the breaking out and becoming a butterfly, that I'm the one that's like, ooh, can I just help you break it open? I see you're struggling. Can I just help you break that open? I don't want you to struggle anymore. And I was having trouble letting go. And so in doing this painting, first of all, the background is a hot mess, because that's just where I was. I was just a hot mess. I literally painted with my fingers. I had this whole plan, and then I just mixed it all around and scratched on it. I threw things at it. That's just there was no plan to it, because that's how it felt. I felt like I had this plan, and it all got messed up. So that's what came out. And then this process of watching this butterfly, who is someone very dear to me, struggle and wanting to go in and save them, and learning that if they didn't have the strength, if I didn't let them struggle, they would never have the strength to let go on their own. And it's really hard to kind of step back sometimes and let people do that, or for us to do that as well. So this is called letting go. And sometimes we kind of hover on that chrysalis a little bit of what was, our old, whatever was for you. We just like to hover there for a minute. And this is kind of that pause in between. I don't know if I know how to fly yet, but I'm just going to sit here for a little. I'm not in the cocoon anymore. I'm not all, but don't know what it was. So this is my mirror. This is, sometimes I paint with personal wrestle. And then the other one, if you don't mind, let me know one time. So I wanted to share with you. I wasn't planning to bring this one. This is called Never Forgotten. So it's very simple. It's a red balloon. If you can't tell, there's some paper behind it. It just says love you. And then there's scripture behind these two clouds down here that are very specific. But I do something kind of interesting and different that I love to get to share with people. Here, I'll leave it up here. I'll stand up here for a second. I felt like I was closing my eyes sometimes when I paint, and I'll just close my eyes and say, God, what do you want me to paint for someone else? This is for me, but I feel like somebody needs to see something that's going to help them through whatever they're going through. And I saw this picture of these balloons, and specifically this red balloon, and it said, I love you. I mean, it was just this very visual image in my head. And I thought, that's kind of simple. Like, that's just kind of, okay, a little bit boring. But I was moving my art stuff around, and tucked under this cabinet that I have was a package of red balloons. Mind you, I am very allergic to balloons, as it turns out, so I don't keep balloons around, and I have no idea how that package of red balloons got into my studio, but it did. So I painted this painting the whole time feeling like it was for people that had lost someone, specifically lost someone, even a child. And so I sometimes just spend time, I pray for people as I paint. So this one, I just spent time praying for people that had lost someone. So I went to a show a couple weekends ago, or like an art fair, and someone very dear to me who actually had lost somebody came up to me and just started bawling and said, why did you paint that? And I said, well, I told her the story. And she said, I called my friend 2 weeks ago bawling because I missed my son. They miscarried and pretty far along. It was a very painful process. And she said, I just missed him and I needed to know that God was still there. And my friend called me and said, I had a dream about you and you were in this room and you were holding this red balloon that said, I love you. And you let it go. And it was such a peaceful dream. And so she just starts bawling. And I thought, sometimes I don't know why I do things. And then sometimes I get to see a little glimpse behind the scenes that the things I think don't matter and the things that I think, it's just a silly red balloon actually really has some powerful meaning for people. So that's why I do what I do. I love getting to paint, to express myself, to tell people they're seen, they're loved, they're valued. So if you're ever interested in coming to do a session, hopefully I get to come to one here and do a session and help other people learn to create. But, that is just a little bit of the behind the scenes. So it was good to meet you all. Yeah.